Thanks to the 5th International Scientific Technical Conference, Print, Multimedia and Web, for giving us the opportunity and the space to present the following research project. My name is Jessica Ortega Diaz, and I'm going to talk about our project called Reconnection, Visualization of Mexican Mysticism in the Era of Globalization, in which the Dr. Natalia Gurieva and I participate. This work exposes the beginning of multimedia project of photography and musicalization, whose central topic is female figures within the legends and myths that are part of Mexican mysticism, with the goal of adapting and redefining these characters to a contemporary context to diffuse and preserve this part of the identity and culture of the country. I will talk a little about the context, documentation, case works, and the legends that are part of the research, as well as the visual development of the first female figure, the Mometskopinki, which, the legend from where she arose and her main characteristics, to end with the explanation of the process for the first photographs of this female figure and our conclusions. According to M. Rosenthal and P. Judin, mysticism comes from the mystical concept that is one of the forms of the idealistic religion's conception of the world. Mysticism is present in each of the existing cultures, ideologies, and religions. The main reason is because it's linked to the sacred, mysterious rites of the Asian, Eastern, and Western religion societies. The main purpose of these rites is the communication with God or with some other mysterious being. Magical thinking for Asian society was the main axis on which everything revolved, the one that gave the answers to natural human analytical phenomena. In order to visualize this response and bring it to a more healthy plane, it was endowed with corporeity. A being was created in which reality and fiction were united, assigning to this entity the responsibility of some event that was not fully understood, be it something as simple as a rain or something deeper like death or life itself. No culture is exempt from having myths and legends that characterize and mark its society, and probably these remain to this day in its collective imagination. Mexico is a country rich in myths and legends that continue to survive through the generation due to the oral diffusion and writing documentation that we have about them, as they are an important part of the country's history because many of these myths that are still present in Mexican society has its origins in the worldview of the pre-Columbian cultures of ancient Mexico. Many of these myths have had modification or multiple versions due to the conjunction of magical thinking with the religion's indoctrination products of the Spanish conquest. The history that will be taken up for this project will be the witches Mometskopinki and Curanderas, the mermaid of Lake Sirahuen, and La Llorona. The goal of the following research is to analyze the female characters within these myths and legends of Mexico, to recreate them in a multimedia project for their diffusion. The connection between technology and culture today is very clear. Globalization has given way to several interesting cultural phenomena that take the interest of many as the mixture of cultures and appropriation of them. The identity, tradition, and cultural traits of different countries and regions reach distant places easily in a way that it was never thought they could reach. These new aspects and interesting concepts capture the general population curiosity and make them interested in these topics, getting to the point of taking and making them their own or starting to try to implement them on their own vision. Mexican culture is no exempt from this. In recent years, a wave of attention has emerged towards Mexican traditions and their worldview, specifically the Day of the Dead, the perception of death, and the mysticism that imbibes the Mexican daily life, where women are a key and important part of it. The loss of identity, or at least the confusion and the large number of thoughts, worldviews, and religions that converge and collide much more due to the interconnectivity of our days, is very common, and although its roots are still present for Mexican society, sometimes it is put aside by the different perceptions that we have today of them, or of histories that perhaps no longer fit with the ideals of today's society. Therefore, the project intends to bring back these histories and myths, giving them a more current vision, but maintaining their essence and what they represent, making them known and spreading them. The project consists of making a visual interpretation through a photographic series where the selected female figures will be captured and where the most representative characteristic, personality, and essence can be observed, as well as the composition of a musical piece of each of the figures, creating an atmosphere specific and that immerse the viewer in the worldview. For the first phase of research, the main text for understanding the myths, legends, and the worldview were the essay about the worldview concept by Alfredo López Austin, the article La Bruja Mometskopinki, Queen of the Night by Rivera Rodriguez, and the compilation article Myth and Bellowing in 6 Mexican Stories of Witches by Eloisa Palafox. The first myth that will be taken will be the Mometskopinki witches. This female figure has been represented extensively by many Mexican artists. However, for this project, 2 female artists were chosen because they have a slightly more realistic and different representation, Gabriela Alcántar Rangel and Carmen Loop. Gabriela is a painter, illustrator, and artist of engraving who takes up Mexican elements and tradition as an important part of her art and discourse. Among the diverse themes with which she creates, one of them is Mexican mysticism. As part of this, she made some illustrations and engravings of the Mometskopinki witches that you are seeing now. Carmen Loeb is a freelance Mexican illustrator graduated from the National School of Plastic Arts, UNAM. In her work, it can be observed how the female figure and the mystique, not only Mexican but in a general way, govern her work, in addition to a tendency to horror and dark representations very marked in his style. It shows a different and raw face of the very interesting Mometskopinki woman, as shown in this image. Palafox transcribes in the end of her article a local version of this legend told by people of Cholula, Puebla, Mexico. The next history is one of these versions, and it's told by Francisco Tecaupetla Tecuatl, born in a small town in Cholula. The witches. My father and mother told me that my father's sister who had a neighbor child, at that time they heard a lot about witches, and if they saw a fire in the distance they turned it on and off, that was a sign that the witch was coming. And the witches even entered through the hole of the lock. I don't know how they did it, but they entered, and after that they looked for the neighbor and sucked his blood. I think that when they go there they transform into guajolote, a turkey, or buzzard, and with the beak they sucked the children's blood. They say that the son of my father's sister woke up by then and the next to the door. She hadn't realized it, and when she woke up and didn't see the baby, she started looking for him until she saw the child by the door. The child was dead because of the witches. I don't know if it was true, but they told me that. They transformed into a turkey, and after that they flew. Many people who had newborn children were afraid that the witch would come at night. They didn't sleep well, and to drive them away they put a mirror and scissors. They were scared when they saw their reflection and the edge of the scissors. After all, they were normal women who transformed into that. And they had to study to transform themselves, to cast spells and do witchcraft. Even today, there are still people who tell me that they were bewitched, or that they saw a witch. The truth is nothing has happened to me, so I don't believe it. As we can see, this figure is presented as a bad woman, who acquired their knowledge and freedom in exchange for selling their soul to the devil or evil entity that was in force at the time, or just because they were born on dates and days marked by fate, which have hybrid characteristics to be able to transform into a type of bird called guajolote, turkey, and have abilities to perpetuate spells and drink the blood of newborns. Mometskopinki is a being born on astrologically marked days. It represents and has the energy of the gods Tezcatipotla, god of the underworld, and Quetzalcoatl, creator of the world, that represent the maximum duality in the Mesoamerican world, representing the creation and destruction of things, the sun and the darkness. All this can be seen reflected in Mometskopinki's most relevant characteristics. the animal transmutation that they had to acquire before leaving, that they performed as a ritual in front of their tlecuyi, a fire made with stone and wood, that endowed them with the characteristic of a bird called aguajolote, large wings, a very pointed beak, and legs of this animal. Fire as an important element that prevails in them as we can see previously. That is also observed when they are coming down from their hiding places in the mountains and hills in the form of a sphere of fire that flies through the sky. The night as a vehicle of their power. Only at night they could acquire their powers and be free to show them. These elements were taken into account for the creation of the photographic image because they are elements mentioned many times and that explain and express the essence of the Mometscopinki woman. Fire as an element of strength and danger, animal transformation to acquire wings and fly out of his home and shed the activities that were believed to be specific to the female gender, to fly and be free at night, where she was able to show herself as she was. To visually sculpt it, we used the most symbolic elements found in these histories, that were fire, strength, freedom, winds, darkness, and night. Different sketches will be made starting from the direct, such as including fire within the photographic session, a natural location, and at night. These ideas were evolving until they resolved into something more metaphorical than continued representing those elements. These are the results. You can see the way that it was designed to play with the edition and montage of different photos in Photoshop, and the use of long exposure shots to generate long and not so defined strokes of certain details within the photograph, as well as totally black backgrounds so the skin can be seen in reddish orange tones like those of fire. The chosen histories Mometscopinki, the curanderas, the mermaid of Lake Seragüen, and La Llorona show different aspects that were shaping and building the current Mexican woman. Some of them, although they were conceived as evil beings or with that duality of good and bad, deep down they only point out a special characteristic within women that in past time was taken for wrong, but today can be embraced and claimed as their own, forging a connection between our past and the present. The preservation of cultural heritage at all times is one of the most urgent problems. Multimedia resources have changed the quality of communication in the information society. In modern conditions, multimedia overcomes geographic boundaries, space, and contributes to the intensification of information exchange. Multimedia allows to use creative potential and find various and effective forms and methods of reconstructing image from myths and communicate them in a language that is understandable for new generations. Actually, we are still working on the project. We analyze a lot of information of the myth of the Mometscopinki, as well as visual reference, and we have a clear conceptual idea of the visual solutions and sound design to obtain the desired atmosphere. The project will continue until obtain the visual and musical representation of the four legends. Thank you for watching this video and for your time. If you want more information about this project, you can write us to these emails. Take care and thanks again.